Hi everyone, it's Miss Pierce. I'm going to read to you the Lamb to the Slaughter test. Just want to break it down to you. There are 3 parts and a bonus. Part 1 is all about literary devices. So this is an open notes test. So you can go back into your quarter 2 assignments and use your story element notes. I think it's one of the first things we did in the second quarter. You can use those notes for questions 1 through 10. All right, let's get started. Part 1, number 1. The plot of a story is A, the most important event in a story, B, a chain of related events in a story, or C, a sudden change in a character's situation. Two, which of the following statements describes an internal conflict? A girl is having a disagreement with her mother. B, the home soccer team is losing to the rival team. Or C, a young boy cannot decide which friend to trust, which is an example of an internal conflict. Next question. The climax of a story is the moment when A, the writer reveals a surprise, B, the story's message is explained, or C, the main character makes a decision. Next. The final part of a story is called, so this is the end of a story. Is it called A, narration, B, basic situation, or C, the resolution? This next question is about foreshadow. If you need to find the answer to this question, you can go back and look at our foreshadow flashback worksheet, and that will give you the definition. So the next question. Writers use foreshadowing to A, describe the setting of a story, B, hint or make clues at what will happen later in a story, or C, explain their purpose for writing a work. Next question. What is characterization? A, what a character says and thinks. B, the way a writer reveals the personality of a character. Or C, all of the above. When you make inferences or predictions about a character, you use all of these strategies except. So which one do you not use? A, draw conclusions based on what the character does. B, analyze how others react to the character. Or C, decide whether or not you like the character. So which one of these would you not use? Next question. In the sentence, Emily didn't know if she would like volunteering at the animal shelter, but she decided to try it. The writer characterizes Emily by A, are they describing her appearance, what she looks like? B, are they showing what she learned at the animal shelter? Or C, are they revealing her thoughts about the animal shelter? Next question. When writers use direct characterization, they A, create characters who are like people they know, B, tell exactly what a character is like, or C, describe their own personality. And last question for part 1. The resolution of a story occurs A, in the beginning of a story, B, at the end of the story, or C, before the climax. Okay, part 2 is all based on Lamb to the Slaughter. Okay, these are worth 5 points each. The questions for part 1 were only 2 points each. So here's the first question for Lamb to the Slaughter. Why is Mary Maloney smiling as she waits for her husband at the beginning of the story? A, she knows she will get even with him that night. B, she loves him and always finds his return a blissful time of day. Blissful means happy. Or C, she knows he won't speak to her for a while and she's looking forward to the peace and quiet. Next question. What is Patrick Maloney's job? A, fire chief. B, stockbroker. C, police detective. Next question. Mary Maloney can be described as, and this is the beginning of the story, so how would we describe her? A loyal and loving housewife. B, short-tempered. Or C, evil. Next one. Mr. Maloney tells Mary he hopes she will not fuss about his decision. Why does he not want her to make a fuss? And we can find this answer on page 154. A, I'll give you money and see you're looked after. B, it wouldn't be very good for my job. Or C, I've thought about it a good deal. So why does he not want her to make a fuss? Again, take a look at page 154. Mr. Maloney can be characterized as A, honorable and innocent. B, disloyal and untrustworthy. C, gentlemanly and kind. Next question. Again, this answer you can also find on page 154. What is Mrs. Maloney's reaction as her husband gives his news to her? So her initial reaction. A, she goes from anger to horror. Horror is like shock. B, she goes from horror to disbelief. Or C, she goes from happy to furious. Next question. Again, this one can also be found on page 154. What is Mrs. Maloney's motive for going to get the lamb from the freezer? A, she wants to use it to hit Patrick. B, she is repulsed at the idea of eating what she already made for dinner. Or C, she thinks she should go about her business as usual and then things will be all right. Next, why does Mrs. Maloney go to see Sam? A, she needs vegetables to go with the lamb. B, Patrick has decided he wants to eat dinner. Or C, she needs someone such as Sam to be a witness that she was out of the house when the murder was committed. Why does Mrs. Maloney go to see Sam? When Mary returns home from the grocery store and sees Patrick's dead body on the floor, how does she feel? A, she pretends she is very upset. B, she actually is upset and shocked and even feels love for him. Or C, she feels indifferent. That is, she could really care less. Next question. What evidence is there that the police have not ruled out Mrs. Maloney as the murderer? So this is asking, what was the only time they may have suspected Mary Maloney? A, the police go off to question the grocer about her alibi. B, they never suspect her at all. Or C, they check the house for fingerprints. Next question. What do the officers do that they undoubtedly know is against police rules? If you need the answer for this one, you can find it on page 161, at the top of 161. So what do the officers do that they know is against police rules? A, they search her house without a warrant. B, they drink whiskey while still on the job. Or C, they treat Mrs. Maloney kindly. Next, what do the police do with the murder weapon? A, they eat it without knowing it is the murder weapon. B, they leave it in the garage. Or C, they eat it although they know it is the murder weapon. Next question. Why does Mary Maloney giggle at the end of the story? This is on page 162. A, she's responding to the irony of the officer's remark about the weapon being under their noses. B, she is glad her husband is dead. Or C, she knows the police will figure out what they have done. Okay, last question for part 2. In the end, the reader knows what happened, but all of the characters except Mary do not know what has happened. What literary device is being used? So, this is when we know something that the characters don't know. Is that A, foreshadow, B, characterization, or C, dramatic irony? All right, part 3. Part 3 is 3 short answer questions. It's all about irony. So I gave you the definition for each example of irony. So first one, provide one example of verbal irony from the short story. So that's when you say one thing but you mean the opposite, also known as sarcasm. So tell me at one point in the story where the police said something that they didn't really actually mean. Okay? All right, second one. Provide one example of dramatic irony from the story. So that's when the reader knows more than the characters. So give me one example of something that we knew, but the police did not know. And then the last one, provide one example of situational irony. So that's when what actually happens is the opposite of what we expect. So what was something, I'll give you a hint, think about the weapon, okay? What was ironic about the weapon? And then your bonus question. This question is optional, but you do have the ability to earn an extra 5 points, so you could actually get 105 on this test. If you could change the ending of this story, would you? Why or why not? Explain in detail. So if you didn't like this ending, tell me what you would do to change it. When you are done, please hit submit.